So now we have to be creative. It's like we don't. My normal patterns of tzedakah are not, are not so simple anymore. So maybe, I have to think freshly about what does it mean to help.
אלוהי, נשמה שנתת בי, טהורה.
The first parsha, this is actually exciting, it's like we've gone through the book, through the whole cycle, and done with Devarim, done with the Chagim, with all the Chagim, and now we're back at Bereshit with the Slonimer on page Yozayin, and here we go. Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim v'et haaretz. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. V'haaretz hayta tohu va vohu v'choshech al pnei te'om. And the land was void and chaos, and there was darkness over the abyss. Vayomer Elohim yehi or, and God said, "Let there be light." Vayehi or, and there was light. Hinei hakli yakar v'shar mefarshim amdu al kach. So here, says the Slonimer, the Kli Yakar and the other commentators were paid attention to the question, L'shema katva Torah mashaya kodem bri'at ha'or. Why did the Torah mention what happened prior to the creation of light? Shebishar inyanei ma'aseh bereshit, since with the other the days of creation, the other items that were created, lo ne'emar be'af echad mehem, with regard of none of them is it said, ma haya kodem briato, what was created prior to it. In other words, the mention of the first day and the creation of the or is out of pattern of the rest of the 6 days. So in the rest of the 6 days, it only says what was created, not what was created prior to that. Here it's the only place where it says that before the creation of light, the land was void and chaos, and that there was darkness upon the abyss. What do we get from that? What comes from, what do we learn from that? Tohu, and on the matter of Tohu, which is void, Piresh Rashi, Shu Lishon Tama v'Shimamon. So Rashi interpreted the word to mean that it's confusion and ignorance. You could say She'adam toheu mishtomem, that a person is confused and is, you could say, confusion and disorientation. I think that's what Rashi means, right?
Yeah.
So v'ra'ui leva'er bazeh mima nov'im hatimahon v'shimamon. And it is fitting that we explain here where does that confusion and disorientation come from? U'ma tshuva bevayomer Elohim yehi or keneged hatiyah v'shimamon. And why does the Torah answer, offer the answer, and God said, "Let there be light,"
right,
as a response to the confusion and disorientation? Right?
Right. What does or have to do with the with disorientation? How is that a remedy? The idea here, this is such a beautiful question the Kli Yakar has raised, that we're interested here in other words, Tohu Va Vohu, this disorientation, this chaos, the state of chaos, is actually a creation.
Right.
Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God created the world yesh me'ayin, from nothing to everything.
That's right.
So there's, without going into the depth of that, but it's a creation ex nihilo, I think is what it's called.
That's right.
It's something from nothing.
Right.
So the Tohu Va Vohu is not nothing, and the darkness on the surface of the deep waters, whatever that means, is not nothing. It's a something, but it's a something that had to be created, that had to be created in order to get to the or. Some kind of a relationship. So the Slonimer, I think, is going to get into this idea of that this Tohu Va Vohu is here,
Right.
as is the or, because a lot of people, because a lot of people are confused when they read the creation story, that we say on day one and that God created light, but yet the luminaries which provide light are not created until the fourth day.
That's
The
right.
sun, the moon, the stars. That has led to a lot of misunderstanding by scholars and whatnot. So this is also going to play in, I'm sure, to the response that the or of day one is something other than the physical entities in the sky of day four.
That's right. The sun and the moon, and
the luminaries.
And so that's very telling. Exactly. So one of the misperceptions is that when God creates light, this is the light like from the sun or from a light bulb, and no, this is a different light, right? Question is, what does it mean? That's
right. Which
open to.
That's the question, right? What is this light, and how is it a remedy to this darkness that God felt He had to create? He had to create a chaos and a disorientation of darkness.
That's right. That's right. So I think what's important, though, to understand is, and I'm glad you're emphasizing it, is that the chaos and void is created. That is not the ex nihilo. That's not the nothing in which God is creating light, but that is also creation. So first the chaos is created, and the light is created here as a remedy. ויש לומר על דרך העבודה, and we should say from the perspective of spiritual work, התורה הקדושה באה ללמד מיד בתחילתה, בראשית ברא אלוהים את השמיים ואת הארץ. That the Torah is, the Holy Torah comes to teach us from the beginning. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth, שענייני הבריאה מתחלקים לבית חלוקות. Meaning that the whole process of creation is divided into two parts, right? So heaven and earth. So that's what he means here. In the beginning, God creates heaven and earth. Yes, from the beginning, there's a dualism. It's created in two parts. Et hashamayim, the heavens, haynu העניינים השמימיים השייכים לנשמה, meaning the matters of heaven that are related to the soul, ואת הארץ. Those are the matters, the earthly matters that are relating to the body. ואת הארץ הם העניינים הארציים השייכים לגוף. והארץ הייתה תוהו ובוהו. And haaretz, the land, was chaos and void. היינו העניינים הארציים שהאדם שקוע בהם מביאים אותו לתוהו ובוהו. Meaning that all matters of earth or earthliness that a person, that the human being is immersed in, bring him or her to chaos and void. שיהיה תוהה ומשתומם ומאבד את יישוב הדעת. And so what does that mean, that a person is steeped in the chaos and void of earthly matters? So he will explain that he will become very specific here and say, שיהיה תוהו ומשתומם, that a person should be confused and disoriented and lose his settled mind. Yishuv hadat, the settled mind. I don't know how better to confuse. How would you translate Yishuv hadat?
Peace of mind.
The calm mind.
An understanding mind. In other words, being able, not being oriented mind.
Oriented mind.
If there is such a word, I don't know.
Well, yeah, we just made it up, right?
Yeah, there you go.
But that's exactly it's exactly aligned with the disorientation. So the opposite of disorientation is an oriented mind. I like the word settled mind because yishuv, lashevet, means to settle down.
Mm-hmm.
So I think of it as yishuv hadat is the opposite of bilbul hadat. Like a mind that is tossed up, stirred up, right? So yishuv hadat feels like an oriented mind, a settled mind, a mind that's stable, like a stable mind. Shezoi atzat hayetzer le'abed kocho shel Yehudi. And here he adds that since it is the Eitzah of the Yetzer, it's like the human impulse, or the Eitzah here is it's the cunning of the human impulse of or the evil inclination, as it's sometimes translated. Le'abed kocho shel Yehudi, to confuse a person's capability.
To be able to align themselves and balance their minds. That's another for the Yishuv hadas, a balanced mind. To keep in balance in this world is difficult. And if one succumbs to the confusion and the disorientation, then that can overpower that person to the extent where they can, God forbid, suffer. It could lead to, in secular terms, it's a kind of a mental illness, actually.
Right. So to lose one's mind, basically.
To lose one, there you go. La bait.
Yeah, to lose one's mind. So we're talking about the settled mind, we're talking about the confused mind, but we're also talking about the lost mind. Lines down. We're going to skip a bit to 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 or 13 lines down in the middle of the line. והגרוע מכל הוא עצם הדבר שהוא מבולבל. So the worst thing that comes out of this confusion and disorientation is the fact that a person becomes confused. וכמו שכתב מרן הקדוש מקוברין, as יאיר עלינו, as the holy rabbi of Kovrin wrote, שכל הון דעלמא אינו שווה לשעה שאיש יהודי עומד ביישוב הדעת ובדעה מיושבת. That there's no treasure in the world that equals in value to one moment of a person existing in the state of a settled mind. Uvidea miyushevet. It's. I think Yishuv hadat is more of a feeling place, a calmness.
Mm-hmm.
And De'a miyushevet is more of the sort of wisdom, of the knowledge. A person needs to have some kind of intellectual understanding or some kind of learning, some kind of Torah, basically, an exposure to real Torah, real information, spiritual information. But also a person needs to have some kind of calmness, some kind of, so it's maybe two sides of the same maybe the emotional and the intellectual sides of the same settling, the same coming into wisdom, coming into, what we'd call equanimity, perhaps.
Yeah.
Another word, yeah. Interesting. והיינו, שהמדרגה הגבוהה ביותר בעבודת השם, and thus the highest rung in divine service or spiritual work, היא מה שיהודי עומד ביישוב הדת ובדעה מיושבת, is when a person, a Jew, attains this, dual state of mind, yishuv hadat, a calmness, and foundation in spiritual knowledge, perhaps. וההפך מזה הוא תוהו ובוהו בלבול הדעת. And the opposite of that state is chaos and void and a confused mind. So, in other words, Hashem creates the world in this state of challenge. It's kind of like Hashem throws us in a messy room and says, "Clean it up." We weren't given like the penthouse suite at the Sheraton Hotel, where everything is in its place. That's what we have to create. We have to get it there, I guess.
Yeah. That's what he's going to say now, that the struggle is the struggle with daily life. I mean, because it's hard to remain with Yishuv Hadas, it's hard to remain settled mind. I mean, look at what's been going on the last half year, 6, 7, 8 months. People struggling in all sorts of ways that who would have ever, in addition to people's normal struggles in a normal, quote, normal environment, adding on all these layers of stress and anxiety. Right. And, when you're thinking about, you have to forced into thinking about all these things on a daily basis and dealing with them in a real way, where do you have time to increase someone's spiritual avoda,
God willing, everybody who's out there, is not at the place of that you can't have your 2 or 3 meals a day. But it's a different kind of a hunger. There's a hunger for normality, a hunger for, orientation. I mean, we're all in disorientation. We can't leave the house. We can't touch people. We can't, we don't know, we economical uncertainty. We don't know how things are going to turn out. Nothing is sure. It's, so where's the spirituality and all that? I think is what.
Right. How can we get to the Vayihi Or? How do we dislodge that from wherever it's stuck?
But I'm also curious here, and I'm speaking to our listeners. If you, how do you find light in these times? I write in the comments below. It'd be really interesting to hear how people are. First of all, how do you settle for yourself the question of, I'm a spiritually oriented person. I want to grow spiritually, and here I am in this chaos and anguish of what's happening all around. Am I distracted from spirituality, or am I finding, or can I lean into my practice of prayer or learning or meditation or whatever, whatever you're doing, The other question is, are there ways, is there a silver lining? Can you see when things get so disorientated, can you find for yourself, let's say it's not your prayer, your davening, or your Torah, or your meditation, or your whatever, is there anything else? Where do you find your silver lining? In family, in friends, in new associations? Are you finding new things? I'm really curious. I'm thinking, what is, because I'm thinking, that we just learned that Hashem created the Tohu Va Vohu. Let's say Hashem created COVID. What's Hashem wanting us to see? It's like, what is it that wants to reveal itself to us. I'm curious about that. I don't know that I have the answer, by the way. I'm really honestly just asking the question. And let's see what the Sonimer says, at least conceptually. Umashmaut ve'haaretz hayta tohu va vohu, and the meaning of the verse, and the land was chaos and void. Hainu kol hamitziut shel ha'inyanim ha'artziyim mevi'im et adam letohu va vohu, and he's going to repeat his interpretation, which means that that all of reality, and especially material reality, bring a person to what we said is to confusion. He's using the words from the pasuk, void and chaos and void, but remember that the Kli Yakar told us that means confusion and disorientation on a mental level. Shelo tomar ki rak b'inyanei isur artziyut pogemet, is to prevent you from saying that, do not say that it only confuses us with matters of prohibition. Ve'ilu inyanei heter einam ma'alim u'moridim, that matters of that are permitted don't confuse us. He says, no. He says, you would think that, only if you do a sin, if you commit a sin, you become confused. He says, no, even the things that are permitted. So let's say if you eat non-kosher, as an example, so that puts you in this orientation, like you're not aligned with the divine purpose, right? And that could create confusion. But he says, no, even eating what is permitted, even when you eat kosher, that also creates confusion. אלא הארץ הייתה תוהו ובוהו, כל העניינים הארציים, אפילו המותרים מביאים לתוהו ובוהו. So what it means when the Chumash says the land was tohu va vohu, it means that everything related to physicality, even the things that are permitted, even the kosher foods, even the the things that we're permitted to enjoy and indulge in this world, without any prohibition from Torah, those also bring us, by their nature, to confusion and disorientation. That's a strong statement. So the only solution to this embedded confusion of the physical world is what is said in the next part of the verse in Genesis. Vayomer Elohim yehi or vayi or, and God said, let there be light, and there was light. She'or Elokut ya'ir b'Yehudi, that the divine light will bring light to the inside of the person, or the Jewish person. Zeyatzil oto mikol ha'inyanim ha'artziyim, and this will, he says, save or redeem him from all the matters, the matters of physicality. And I would say what he means is the challenges of physicality. In other words, living in this world, in this created world, is challenging by its nature, by design. And then it's the divine light that lifts us from inside that challenge. It's almost like medevac, I'm imagining like a helicopter, the divine helicopter sending, down, they send that rope with the stretcher. It's like, pull me up from this chaos. Shekasher or elokut ma'ir bo, such that when the divine light is illuminating him or her, אז הוא יכול להעלות את כל העניינים הארציים לעבודת השם. Then a person can elevate all physical matters upwards towards divine service. כמאמר הרב הקדוש המגיד ממזריץ', as the Maggid of Mezrich may his memory enlighten us, said, Mal'ah haaretz kinyanecha. He quoted the verse, the land is full of your
Possessions.
kinyanecha is your possession,
Possession.
yeah. Hartziut מלאה בדברים שאפשר לקנותך בהם. So he does a play on words here, and let's try to explain that for those of us who are not, proficient in the Hebrew, that physicality is filled with things with which we can bribe you with, right? So the word kinyan has two meanings. It can be your possession. That means that you're the owner of something. Something is established as yours. So when we say Mararetz Kinyanecha, we're establishing the idea that everything here really belongs to God. It's like, I think I have possessions. Come on, this is only borrowed. For my 120 years, like for 120 years, I'm borrowing. So I have stocks, I have bonds, I have a house, I have a car, I have clothes. I don't take it with me, right? So you could say that this is borrowed. Who's the ultimate possessor? Hashem is the ultimate possessor of everything, right? I come, I borrow it, I leave, I give it back. So that's the sense of having an established proprietorship of something. And we acknowledge that, from a spiritual point of view, everything on earth is really ultimately under the proprietorship of the divine. But the word kinyan also means liknot, to buy, to purchase,
To acquire.
Right? To acquire something.
To legally acquire something.
Exactly. So if I koneh something, to be koneh, the same root of kinyan means that I give you money and you give me the thing, right? So he makes a play on the word. The physicality is full with things with which I can buy you. What does it mean to buy you? It means to bribe you. If I'm buying a politician, when they say that a politician is owned by somebody else, usually that's because somebody else gave them $100,000, or $100 million contribution to their campaign. So he's bought, he's owned, right? That's when we say to buy you. He's using the same language. It says the earth is full of things with which I can buy you, Hashem, I can bribe you, right? So what does it mean? What does that mean in terms of the idea that the Slonim is trying to tell us here? Is that we have the potential to elevate everything on earth towards Hashem. And that's, bribing obviously is a negative thing. It's asur, it's completely, corrupt and not allowed. But to bribe God is okay, because when we take something and say, God, I give this to you, we're elevating it. So we're kind of like taking something that's physical and we're making it, we're bringing it into the realm of Hashem. Therefore, it's no longer confusing. It's no longer in that state of Tohu Va Vohu. It's like, okay, I'm going to take the earth and I'm going to bring it up to heaven, and it becomes part of heaven. And that's the power of the human being and the power of the spiritual work, is to take that which is confusing, that which is dense, that which is material, that which is inherently challenging, and elevate it and make that into a heavenly substance, is how I understand the Slonim. But the way he says it, it's very, I like the play on the word kinyan. It's like the earth is all full of your possessions, and I will bribe you with it and make everything holy like you. Right? Liknotcha b'hem. Anything you want to add to that? Or?
No, yeah, I mean, you say, the potential to acquire spirituality through the physical.
That's right.
The message that it's the potential is there. We have to unearth the or from within the Artziut.
That's right. Well, I think it's important also because a lot of people often ask me and are aware of the distinction between the other spiritual traditions that take a different perspective. This is a unique perspective that I think that from Torah, that I think there are the traditions that say we have to negate everything physical. Physical is bad, spiritual is good. And you get the ascetic tradition. By the way, even in Jewish tradition, you have the ascetics. You have the people who would fast too much or cause themselves suffering, to try to purge out physicality from within you. And the Hasidim said no. The Baal Shem Tov said no. Baal Shem Tov said no. You don't negate the physical. You elevate the physical towards heaven, or you bring the Or Eloki, you bring the divine light into the physical, right? We're not, you can say, I think according to Chassidut, and I think according to Torah, we're not an anti-physicality. We're not we don't do celibacy. We don't do, it's like, Hashem gave us physicality. The question is, what do we do with it? How do we bring physicality into integration with the spirituality? And that's a distinct Torah derech. We see physicality as challenging, but we don't see physicality as bad.
Correct.
Or something to negate or to avoid. So
yep.
That's the Torah way. So last paragraph, and we'll wrap this up. Zoy tzalechol. So the remedy, according to the verse in Genesis, to all the challenges that come from physicality is, so God said, let there be light, and there was light. Even when a person is immersed in physical matters, the divine light is still illuminating, it's still shining within him or her. And his or her entire mind is occupied only with the thought or with the intentionality to be pleasing to the Holy One, blessed be. And that's what it means. Let there be light, and there was light. That's the Yishuv Hadat on the side of knowing. I need to choose a perspective that gives me that calmness. So if I choose a perspective that this is all part of God's work, I may not understand it, but I know that this is moving towards a place that's better for everybody.
Right.
The question is, how can I help make things better for everybody? I'm still curious about how do we find light, the Or Elokim, inside the challenge, and how does that manifest in people's lives? That would take, to open up that discussion now would take more time than we have. But I'll just say one thing. How can we be helpers to others in a situation where we can't even come close to others, right? Maybe Hashem is asking us to rethink helping. Once upon a time, helping men bring food to people, bring, I don't know, now we have to be creative. It's like we don't, my normal patterns of tzedakah are not, are not so simple anymore. So maybe, I have to think freshly about what does it mean to help. How many times do I need to talk to somebody because they're lonely? How many people do I have to check in on? Because I don't even know, because we're not communicating the same ways, right? So So that's the Or Eloki. We have to see the Or Eloki in new ways now, because we're living in new conditions that that we have not experienced before. So that's one little practical suggestion, and may that bring, Baruch Hashem, may it bring the Yishuv Hadat and the calmness of mind, the wisdom of mind, as well as the settledness of mind. May we be, choose not to fall into confusion. And it's easy. Everybody's confused. I mean, I hear the news, I get confused. I hear my board, my board members, I get confused. I hear people, complaining about this or that, I get confused. It's like, it's easy to go to like, it's like, maybe we bless with a settled mind, Yishuv Hadat, and with the Dea Miyushevet, the mind that's full of wisdom, that will get us through these times. And with that, we're gonna conclude. Folks, please, let's continue the conversation. Feel free to leave comments below. Like and subscribe. Shalom for now, and happy Bereshit, happy new starts. Shalom until next Wednesday.